Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 20 called Amanda. So I can't believe we made it to episode 20 already. I'm so excited. And I saved this episode, this interview with Amanda Rice, who is an incredible person, for the 20th episode because it seemed like a really big deal. And what she is doing is a really big deal. So just to tell you a little bit about Amanda Rice, she started an organization, a nonprofit called Chick Mission. And it helps young adults who are diagnosed with cancer learn about their fertility options and gives them scholarships to freeze their eggs if they're so inclined to do that. Amanda is amazing in her own right. She was diagnosed with cancer not one, not two, but 3 times under the age of 40, and she beat it every single time. So she's going to tell us all about her incredible story, how she came up with Chick Mission, and what they're doing now. So this is a huge one. It's pretty long, but it is so good. Amanda, you are the biggest fucking badass, and I love you so much, and I'm so glad our friend Gail introduced us. So without further ado, this is Amanda's infertility story. Amanda, thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad we finally nailed down a date. It took us a minute.
It took us a minute, but
we're
here.
We're here, and we have so much to talk about. So let's start with just kind of a general thing about your background. Like, where did you grow up?
Sure.
What kind of kid were you?
I grew up in White Plains, New York, so not too far from New York City. And I had a great upbringing. Wonderful parents, very supportive. I was always the kid who was trying to sell you something, whether it was, oh, I should have a TV in my room and my own phone line, to, oh, my sister and I for Christmas should get, what was it back then? VHS players. Mm-hmm. We should both get them because it's only fair. And I should, I would hit them up for anything and everything.
Yeah. Did it work?
It worked.
Really?
It totally worked.
Okay.
My dad was such a softie because he had 2 daughters, mm-hmm. and we were super into sports, so we sort of filled that boy void. We were both really into softball, mm-hmm. and he coached us, and it was really just great. And my mm-hmm. mom, she took a little time off when my older sister was born and then went back to work. So I had a great role model there. Mm-hmm. She was project manager for many, many years. And yeah, it was a good upbringing. Mm-hmm. At one point, I knew there was a little trouble in their marriage. You could just tell. And sort of my opinion of their divorce was it's a good thing because mm-hmm. then both of them could find happiness again.
Right.
And ultimately my mom did, and unfortunately my dad passed of a heart attack in his sleep.
Sorry.
So I had just registered. I graduated from high school. Uh-huh. He was so proud, and I got into Tulane University, which was amazing. Got in early, knew I was going there, went mm-hmm. to visit with my dad, and we had the best weekend, and I knew absolutely it was the best choice. And I registered for classes, and he went away on a business trip. And the last conversation I had with him was excuse me.
No, it's okay.
Just like the best conversation, because I had told him about all the classes that I registered for mm-hmm. at school and how excited I was. And he was able, I'm so lucky because he was able to tell me how proud he was and how I was going to kick ass mm-hmm. in everything that I did. And he was super proud and so excited for me to be there and to come visit and all of those things.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, life gives you, there are a lot of crossroads in life, a lot, as we all are aware. And he, had his blessing, and he he was just really proud of me, and he was always really proud of me, and he always told me. So
yeah. Did you know what you wanted to study in school?
I thought so. I mean, he was a businessman, and I had taken accounting courses in high school, actually, and thought I wanted to be an accountant. So I went to school, I took a bunch of accounting classes, hated them, thought they were the most boring things ever. But I did have an amazing 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Yuzo, who told me I was really good at math.
Oh.
And so I was hooked from 5th grade on. It's either 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
Brain doesn't work as well. But she told me, she sort of singled me out one day.
Yeah.
And was like, you are really good at this. Keep this up.
Yeah.
And so I felt super confident in math. And I was like, I'm going to be good at this. And so I ended up being good at it.
Yes.
And
isn't that cool how teachers can lay the groundwork like that?
I mean, that another crossroads.
And you still remember her name.
Love her.
Yeah.
She was awesome.
Yeah.
And just
so
like
great.
a badass and like opinionated.
Yeah.
And wasn't afraid to speak up. And those are the people that have influenced my life.
Right.
And I always felt like I'm a very practical person. So I felt like if I went to the business school, studied finance, studied the markets, it would always be a useful tool for me one day, regardless if I went into fashion or beauty or something else creative, or maybe I went into tech, although there wasn't much tech at that time.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I had to still I had to go to a computer lab to check my email in college.
Yeah, we didn't even have email when I was in college. We had it the last year of college, and you had to go to the computer
lab, log in.
It was like the EDU addresses and
that annoying noise.
Exactly.
That millennials will never know of. Thank goodness. Anyway, so I knew I was bound for the business school.
Okay. That's so smart to have that background, depending on whichever way you go, like to think that way. That was brilliant.
And I took like a bunch of different courses about the market. I took, management communications. I took micro and macroeconomics, which then I realized I'm really bad at economics. Got a D. I got my first D in my entire life in microeconomics, followed by a big D in macroeconomics.
Okay.
So wasn't going to be an econ major.
Yeah.
But took some great classes, ended up at the business school at Tulane, took a phenomenal course called the Burke and Rhodes Report, where you study companies and analyze companies with some of the MBA students.
Cool.
And was hooked on that. So I knew at some point, investments was going to be my thing. And so I moved back home. Well, actually, home didn't exist anymore because my mom, when I went to college, sold our house in White Plains.
Okay.
And bought an apartment in the city. And so that was another example of my salesmanship. When she sold our house, I said, I'm not going to come home to like your small hometown in Pennsylvania. I have to be in New York. And so at the time, it was like, mid to late 90s. And she bought a studio apartment in the city for all cash. It was like $55,000 on the Upper East Side.
Cool.
55 or 60,000, I can't remember. But again, she's like, well, I can't disappoint my baby. Like, I'm going to try and do this. And it was the best decision she ever made because she is such a New Yorker through and through.
Yeah.
And loves the arts.
So did she live there as well? Or
yeah.
Okay.
So she lived there. She sort of went back and forth between her hometown in northeastern Pennsylvania and New York. And telecommuted. So, and had a partner at the time. And had a great relationship with him. And I still do. Yeah. I always knew I wanted to be a career woman. And I wanted to be independent. And make my own money, make my own rules. It was something that just felt I was destined to do and be. And I was on the fence. I mean, I wasn't going to try to force the kid situation, but it really took me a long time, a lot of, traveling, partying, just working very hard, career focused. And I really think it was only, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm 42 today, that kind of I want to be a mom thing really, sort of came down like a sledgehammer.
Okay.
And it's not to say my life will not be full without children, because I have a lot of obstacles to get there. And I sort of leave it to fate. But it was really the birth of one of my best friend's children, my godson, that, just being there throughout the process with her and being such a part of his life as a baby and spending so much time with him. And I just was hooked. And I was like, I gotta make sure I give myself every opportunity if the universe, allows it, and I figure out a way to either do it on my own as a single woman, or find a partner, after my divorce with my husband.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So back to the chronology a little bit. So you've graduated college, you're in New York. When did you meet your previous husband, who's now you're not together anymore, but we'll get to all that.
My first husband.
Yes.
So Jim and I met, we were, I think, 25 and 26, and we met at work at Merrill Lynch, and he's just a fabulous guy, full of life, charming, funny. He's just a great guy. And he was the first guy that I ever told I loved. And I think, I just wasn't, after the loss of my dad, I think it took me a long time to figure out how to have a healthy relationship.
Okay.
And I felt like I always wanted to be in control because I didn't want to lose someone. And, it took me a long time and a lot of relationships, and sorry to those guys.
But you were probably still heartbroken.
I was
at your core, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, I was just very fearful of losing someone.
Yeah.
And it just took me a while. And Jim and I worked together. We were friends first, flirty friends.
Sure.
And we had this internal messaging system, and we would write notes back and forth, and we couldn't really leave the desk,
right.
But we could jump down the elevator, grab lunch, and come back to our respective areas. And so we would do that. And I was dating someone at the time, and after that guy and I broke up, Jim asked me out, and I was like, I can't date you. One of my rules, my mom set the ground rules. She's like, you don't date people at work. And so I was like, I can't really date you. And blah, blah, blah. We'll just say we never dated when we worked together, but maybe there was a smooch here or there.
Sure.
And eventually I decided to leave the company, and Jim organized my going away party. And then I don't know, he always has the better memory. So I don't know what happened first, but there was some, smooching and a date. And then he wrote me this really sweet letter, you have no choice anymore. You got to go out with me. So
you don't work here anymore.
He's like, sorry, your excuse is bogus.
Yes.
And so we got married. We dated for a while and then got married in our early 30s. And, life was good.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I'm a great girl. There was something that just wasn't right. And I think because we had been dating so long, and we had, we were intertwined in friendships and intertwined in family. And, because there wasn't anything wrong with him, he was going to be a great dad one day. He's smart, he's funny. I think we ended up in this marriage because we didn't know, how to get out of not getting to that point in our relationship.
Yes, it gets very complicated, and sometimes it's easier to stay together, and the notion of splitting up seems daunting, and
it does. And I think, I always tell my younger friends, marriage is not the goal. The goal is to find happiness and partnership and long-term companionship and find things in common and build each other up and be there for one another. So life started to get a little complicated. I'd say in the beginning of 2014, things, we were struggling in our marriage and had moved out to the burbs. And in early 2014, I noticed a really strange symptom in my body that I just felt like was gross. It was my left breast. The nipple was like sort of had like a little bit of nipple discharge coming out of my bikini. We were on vacation, and I was like, oh, I'm sort of klutzy. Maybe I cut myself. And then I started noticing it, the week after when I'll wear, not TMI, but, like a black bra or a navy bra or whatever. Right. But when I would wear something nude, I would have like a little spot. Okay. And so I'm like, well, that's gross. I'm like, 37, I have like some leaky nipple. I haven't had kids yet. Like, what's going on?
Leaky nipples.
I was like, ew. So I went to see my OBG, and she's like, oh, breasts are funny. You're getting older. I don't know. It wasn't very helpful. Okay. There are, I'll say this time and time again, you have to be your own advocate. Totally. It's insane. You trust doctors because they have gone to all this schooling and have met with a number of patients. Right. And they know everything because they're doctors. And a lot of doctors, they're phenomenal. I have so much respect for doctors and nurses. OMG, they are just heaven on earth. Mm-hmm. But they're humans, and they can study all these things and interact with tons of patients, but they're not the end-all be-all. There's a lot of art that goes along with medicine and trials, and they have to make them placebo controlled. Like there's so much to know, and people's bodies are changing, and the environment is different, and technology is different. Right.
So, plus every person is different, and every body is different. So even if you study X, Y, and Z, when you're in the actual thick of it with real patients, it could be totally different from what you studied in school.
Totally. They're making educated guesses with as much information as possible.
So what happened after that? So did you have a hunch that something was wrong and you got a second opinion?
Yeah, or? I just felt gross. She said, well, I can give you a mammo if you want, but does breast cancer run in your family? And I said, no. And just even hearing that, I was like, oh, that's weird. Let me take the script for the mammo. And, I think the national guidelines now are 40. There's been some debate between 40 and 45. I think knowledge is power. I know there are people that fight this because of cost, because of false positives, but I truly was happy that it was even on the table. I took it. I went to get a mammogram. One of the big misperceptions with cancer is you're going to know right away that you have cancer. So you don't. They have to do a battery of tests to get to finally uncovering a cancer cell within your body. Even if you have a tumor or a leaky breast or some puckering or all the other random symptoms, I had to do 4 separate biopsies, 2 that were MRI guided, which you literally go in an MRI machine and they stick a needle in your boob. Really fun and painful. Yeah. Freezing cold room. I remember sitting there, I'm not a big alarmist. It's okay if you are. But my husband was at the Big East tournament, and I'm sitting on the table with a biopsy needle in my breast, and I'm crying hysterically because I'm like, I didn't even ask him to come with me, and this is awful. And I feel so exposed, and I was a very modest person before I went through cancer. Yeah. Very modest. Okay. And now I'm like, who wants to see my new boobs? Touch them, feel them. Yeah, exactly. They're not mine. But at that point, it took so many tests and weeks of waiting for pathology. And finally, they had to do a surgical excision to get to where the cancer was in this left breast. Okay. And finally, sure enough, the breast surgeon was like, I found it. I knew it was there. I found it. Okay, it is cancer.
Okay. So what did they find exactly? Some cells or a cluster of cells or something like that? Okay. Yeah. Did you know going through all these tests, did you have a gut feeling that it was going to be cancer? Or were you like, oh, this is...
So I wasn't sure what it was going to be, what stage or anything like that. Because at first they found atypical ductal hyperplasia. So ADH is And I already warned Allie in advance that I get a little bit technical and annoying on this stuff.
I don't think it's annoying. I think it's fascinating.
Atypical ductal hyperplasia is like pre-cancer.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean you're going to get cancer. It just means there's some abnormalities in your breast tissue. Okay. It may never lead to cancer, so don't freak out. Then there's the next phase is DCIS, which is ductal carcinoma in situ. So that means I don't know if the proper word is encapsulated, but it hasn't like burst out into true cancer.
Okay.
So they had found both of those. So ADH was in the right breast, ductal carcinoma in situ was in the left breast, but throughout my breasts.
Okay.
So at this point, for vanity, for symmetry, for everything else, I'm absolutely getting a bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction.
Okay.
Because I had already, because of all the biopsies, my left breast was a little bit weird and I could get a lumpectomy, but because it was spread throughout and there wasn't like a specific tumor to remove, it just would have left me with like kind of janky boobs.
Okay.
And I always was very, very proud. Two of my best qualities are my boobs and my hair. Let's be honest. And they're like, yeah, your boobs are sort of, rotting at the core. We're going to remove them. I'm like, okay. I was 37. Boobs were like still great.
Rotting at the core.
But
the technical term.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how long between the first mammo and like the diagnosis? Was it months or weeks or?
Good question. It was probably 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. And you were still working during that time?
Still working.
How was it? Was it having any sort of effect on your relationship or? I mean, it must have been stressful for you and for him as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, you can't underestimate the stress that happens to a spouse and to the family and friends. They want answers just as much as you do.
Yeah.
And so that sucks. Work was fine. It was distracting.
Okay.
I love what I do for a living. So
yeah.
I was like, okay, I can do this. It's good distraction. I'm all in. And the surgical excision where they found the cancer was the day before our founder's funeral, who died of cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite poetic. The hedge fund that I worked for was, I'd been there for 8 years, a little over 8 years. And our founder was like the lifeblood. He was the energy. He was the mood. He cared about everyone so much. And it was terrible to see him. The last time I saw him was before I went on that vacation.
Okay.
He had found his cancer through pain.
Oh, wow.
And he never came back to the office.
Okay.
And then the next time that we were honoring him was the day after I found out I had cancer.
Wow.
And so the firm was already struggling with, the loss of the founder. And then I was like, oh, geez, I got to like bum everyone out. So I eventually told them, and I scheduled my mastectomy, which was May 21st of 2014. And, that's also not exact, but it's sort of a tag team thing. Breast surgeon goes in, removes as much breast tissue as possible with a clean margin. It is, they do this nipple-sparing, skin-sparing mastectomy now. We have come so far in the last 10, 20 X years. They can do an amazing job. I mean, I'm very proud of what is under this right now. And I found the most amazing plastic surgeon, Mia Talmore. I adore her. She's just like the coolest, nicest, and she's double board certified. Like, she's just a badass. So we did reconstruction. They put in something called an expander. The expander is basically, I always say, and it's probably not the right thing to say, but when you go hiking and you have like the Camelback that you fill with water to keep you hydrated, that's sort of what they put in you to help expand the skin so you don't get a bunch of stretch marks. So you decide, like, I remember sitting around the plastic surgeon's office with my mom,
all the different sizes,
and my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time. We were feeling different, implants, silicone saline, the gummy bear, they have all these names for them.
Yeah.
And finally, all of us agree on my new boobs, and so we had to make sure, like, the skin expanded in a very nice way. So they do that over time. And fast forward to, so I had one little hiccup in between, which was one of the lymph nodes that they removed during your mastectomy. They test to see if there is any cancer. And they also test your nipples because that's like the blood source. So my nipples were clear. I could keep them. Lots of people can't. And there's tons of great tattooing you can do. But I was lucky, got to keep them. And then the one lymph node, I think they take out 3 or 4. One lymph node came back positive. And that just sort of takes you from stage 1 to maybe stage 1A or B or maybe further. So it leads to another surgery. Long story short, a couple weeks later, I got a lymph node dissection, which they take out this kind of healthy pad of lymph nodes under your armpit. That's where you can get a bunch of them, so you can test a lot and make sure that it hasn't spread. Or if it has spread, then you have to do further testing. So they took about, I think, 19 or 21, and it came back clear.
Okay.
So that was great. I did then seek a second opinion at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and they determined that that sentinel node that was positive, I mean, this was just crazy science, and just I'm so lucky that I got to see the oncologist that I got to see there, who's Dr. Larry Norton. He is the guru of all things breast cancer. He was the former president of ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology. He's the co-founder of the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. I mean, this is the guy that has access, and his brain is just amazing. He has access to all the studies. He has a phenomenal memory, has read so much, and he's like, you know what? In my opinion, this was pushed in by one of those 4 biopsies that they did. And it's still encapsulated, and I'm going to say it did not spread to your lymph node. And I was like, well, we just came from another hospital that said you're 100% having to do chemo. So our family was elated. You know, he literally, you know, we were all like crying and upset and, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to lose all my hair. And this and that. And he changed the course of treatment, you know, right away.
Wow.
And he actually like started making fun of my cancer, which I really appreciated. He's like, you've got fake cancer. And I was like, I love this.
Oh my God.
You know, it was a little unnerving, but
Sure.
But my family's like, okay, we got to trust the guru
Yeah.
of all gurus. And he even had the oncologist at the other organization come to his office, and he explained sort of what he saw.
Wow.
And he he was very convincing. She was like, you're right. And they changed to long-term drug therapy instead of chemo. And I was really happy.
Wow.
But all the while, my mind and everything was kind of stirring, because when you're told you're going to get ACT chemo, it has a very high risk of infertility. And so, yes, I knew Jim and I were in a place where we weren't necessarily going to have kids together, but, you know, I was past 35, and I know there's a big cliff of, you know, your options as far as, you know, your FSH and your EMH levels, and sorry to throw so many acronyms, but these are important things to know as women. We are born with every egg that we're ever going to have.
Right.
And
That's wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So if you have some sort of systemic thing that's poison coursing through your veins, that could lead to, you know, those eggs being affected, damaged, and also it could put you into menopause. And so I did make the decision to freeze my eggs at that point, and I am very glad that I did it. I got a few eggs, and then sort of, you know, decided the course of treatment was to be on, I had estrogen and progesterone positive, HER2 negative breast cancer. So there are a lot of options for us. We're kind of the lucky ones. There's been the most studies on us, the most medications out there. So you're basically, after everything's done and you get your, you do your exchange surgery between the expander and your implants, you're sort of like, you're good. I remember being in Greece with my husband a couple weeks later.
Really?
Feeling great back
after
in bikini.
your mastectomy.
Yep.
How was the actual surgery for you and the recovery? I mean, you just said you were away 2 weeks later, so that's great.
The swap surgery actually was outpatient and super easy. The mastectomy, I mean, that comes with, I was recovering in a chair. I couldn't sleep. The expander is very uncomfortable, and you're also in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I mean, you have like these gross drains in you, draining things after surgery that you just don't want to see.
Yeah.
You're almost like doing this lab experiment on your body. And I was recovering in this chair that my stepfather bought for me. You can't really sleep on your side, or you're just so uncomfortable, and you're hopped up on pain meds.
Right.
And pain meds cause constipation, and you can't shower, and you can't wash your hair because you can't lift your hands up above your head. And so, thank you, Dry Bar. Thank you to one of my BFFs who sent like a pedicurist to my house.
Yeah, those are the little things that mean so much. That make you feel more back to normal, and
And I have this list of things to bring to the hospital. So anybody who needs the mastectomy list, it's
maybe we could put that on.
Purpose wipes, because you can't shower while the drains are in, and you have them in for like a good week, sometimes 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So these are things you heat up in the microwave and like wash. Each one has a number, and like you wash your left arm with number 1.
Oh, cool.
And your back with number 2.
Okay.
But yes, we can post that for sure.
Okay, cool. So going back to when you decided to freeze your eggs, I believe it's true that your fertility preservation coverage was denied by your insurance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I was...
Why? What was the reason?
So they're, it's insurance companies. They really don't want to cover anything. And it's sad that this is the state of affairs these days. They are for-profit companies. And the more they don't cover, the more profit they will make.
Sure.
So, there's just this thing. They have this definition of infertility. And the only way you get there is if first, in most cases, and this was mine, you have to be trying for 12 months without success. Well, we weren't in the best place in our marriage, so we were not trying to have a baby. Because that's not going to fix our marriage. Then, after you try for 12 months without success, you graduate to IUI. Well, I was diagnosed with cancer that is hormonally fed, and then they want to pump me with hormones where IUI doesn't have such great outcomes. And, by the way, I need to go on a medication for 10 years that is pregnancy category X. So you want me to wait, be pumped with hormones, have a baby, and then, this could have turned into a nightmare.
Right.
So you have to do a number of IUIs.
Yeah.
Then you can graduate to IVF.
Right.
And in vitro fertilization, I won't even get into the whole specifics. I'm sure your listeners know all of it. But for cancer, they pump you full of medication because they're trying to hyper stimulate you to get as many eggs as possible before you have to start treatment, and you may never get another shot at it.
Okay.
So they really, back in the day, I was taking, I would finish a gonal F pen in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Or less than 2 days.
Wow.
This was like, we're going for the gusto.
Yes.
And so there is a separate protocol. They would give you letrozole as a cancer patient. They would do these other things, but they would monitor you, and there's a conversation or numerous...
Were the doctors working together?
Yes.
And okay.
That's the only way they'll do it.
Sure.
Is if they talk to your fertility specialist, speaks with your oncologist, and they come up with a game plan and a timeline.
Wow.
Because some people will have very serious treatment ahead of them. And not to say that mine wasn't serious, but some people have to rush in. So they have to start your cycle. You can manipulate a cancer patient's cycle. You don't have to wait until a fresh new cycle to start your couple of weeks of stimulation.
Okay.
So
wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so you did the retrieval and
did the retrieval.
Did you do it once or did you?
At that point, once.
Okay.
I got 3 eggs.
Okay.
Which, I guess you're going for quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
They froze all 3.
Did you feel disappointed with that number?
Definitely.
Or was that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I looked, I was like, I was 37, so I knew I was past like the best times, but I was healthy and I ate well and I didn't smoke and maybe I drank too much, but there's, I felt that was a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
It was like, I felt like less than, and
yeah. all that.
Yeah, all the shitty things that we all feel. And that is, it's like a true definition of a woman, to be able to have a baby. And I don't feel that way now, but back then I was like, ugh, I'm kind of damaged goods. And that was a shitty feeling. But at least at that point, I'm like, you know what? I've got an insurance policy, and now Larry Norton just changed the course of treatment, so I'm going to go on tamoxifen. And, we had talked as a husband and wife to my doctor, and he said, well, go on it for 3 years. Then you can take a drug holiday, try to get pregnant, and then let's see how that goes. Okay. So that would have made me 40. And
so for 3 years, you were going to...
3 years tamoxifen.
Okay.
But turns out I went on tamoxifen for a couple of months, and I don't know exactly if it was, the cancer caught up with me or the medication or a combination of both, but I felt a deep, dark depression.
Oh, okay.
And could not function. I was waking up. I had never really understood what anxiety was before that moment in time. I was waking up at 3 a.m, like... and could not go back to bed, and everything was going through my head. Terrible thoughts. And, I remember breaking down in my kitchen and describing to my husband these feelings that I wanted to step in front of the subway.
Wow.
And I'm like the glass half full girl. I'm the happy-go-lucky. Like, I bring the fun and the positivity. And
right.
I felt so ashamed, and...
Ashamed that you felt depressed?
Yes.
Or it was all adding to each other?
I was just like, holy fuck, what is going on? I can't live life this way. I mean, it was so debilitating, and I was getting pressure from work, and I just felt like dog shit. And I finally, admitted it out loud, and I was crying all the time. I mean, it was such a classic case of depression. I went to, the Sloan has so many different resources. I went to the mental health, department, which happens to be close to my office. And I'm doing sort of that intake form. And it's like, are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you crying all the time? I mean, I literally checked every single box. Wow. And I was like, this is insane. I can't believe this happened. This is worse than cancer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So had you ever felt that down in the dumps before in your life?
Never.
No?
Never, ever, ever. And then I started feeling guilty because I have plenty of friends and family who have, and then how could I be so insensitive? And God, I'm an asshole, and all the things. Ugh.
Yeah. So did you go off that drug?
I finally. I mean, I was calling the doctor's office. I went to see him, and he made me feel so much better. He's like, "Listen, you have been under a tremendous amount of stress for a very long period of time. Literally, it's science. Your serotonin is completely gone.
Wow.
It is so depleted, you can't possibly replenish it on your own." And he gave me he told me some good stories, and just made me feel better. And I went straight away on Lexapro, went off the tamoxifen, and we were going to test out some other things, and they just wanted to get me, that was probably November, and I wanted to feel happy before Christmas. I was like, I can't live like this. And finally, I mean, it took a couple weeks to feel like a pretty substantial difference.
Okay.
And I felt kind of naive, but I'm like, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. These drugs work, and it doesn't mean you always have to be on them.
Right.
You don't. I was scared to go on. I felt like I wouldn't be myself. I wouldn't feel happy. I wouldn't feel sad. I would just be muted. Yeah. Absolutely not. And I finally felt better. I was taking long walks. I felt, I was doing physical therapy to get my movement back, and I just felt much, much better physically. And so I wanted to get better mentally, and I also knew at that point in time I wanted to switch to another firm. And so I was like, I can't even interview because I'm depressed and I'm not putting my best foot forward. And anyway, so thank you, Lexapro and Dr. Norton and my family and my friends.
Okay. So then once you got back to normal, what was happening with your husband? And then there was another diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, I say this jokingly, but in all seriousness, I'm an overachiever, so I'm also a cancer overachiever. All early stage, so that's the kind you want.
Yeah.
But I randomly, so husband and I, we were good in a crisis, and so I think we were just sort of riding off of that. And one of my best friends got married that summer, and she's just awesome, and it was like the most fun wedding ever. So, but before I went, I had noticed like a weird mark on my arm, and after you have cancer, you're kind of like, oh, I gotta watch my spots and watch all my bodily functions, my bodily movements, lots of breast exams post mastectomy.
Yeah.
And I noticed a dot. I went to my derm, told him what had happened with the cancer. He was mad at me because I hadn't told him. Anyway, but he took a little, as they do, they find something abnormal. Took it off, sent it out to the lab, and I went on my merry way to this wedding out in Sun Valley, Idaho.
Nice.
And as luck should have it, our flight was canceled on Sunday, so we got to keep the party going and ended up flying home Monday. And as I'm walking into my house, I notice my dermatologist is calling my cell phone, which, he's sort of like my cosmetic derm. He gives me my scans, my body scans. I'm like, why is Dr. Mandel calling my cell phone? Pick up the phone. He's like, yeah, so I know I said it was nothing, but it's melanoma. And I'm like,
my God.
No.
But God.
Again, not related to the breast. I think probably too much sun exposure as like a lifeguard growing up or on the beach or whatever.
Did you grow up putting baby oil on? Like,
so
we were like that.
I was
family
never
that, like,
that bad.
Okay.
But I definitely remember like some massive sunburns when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandparents were in Florida for part of the year. I remember being in Mexico one time and getting a terrible sunburn.
Yeah.
I've been pretty good with sunscreen like my whole adult life, but you got to check your spots.
Yep.
And this was not a big deal. It was surgically removed. I've got like a really cool scar that looks like, I call it my shark bite or shark attack. No drugs, I ended up, because I had to go to, a dermatologist at Sloan, I had him like laser it, and he lasered my boob scars, and so it was kind of like a win-win.
Okay.
But I'm like, oh, cancer number 2, all right, kicked its butt.
So you're like, this is never going to happen again.
Yeah, I was like, 2014 was breast, 2015 was melanoma.
Yeah.
2016, we're like, all right, we're kind of holding our breath, everything's going well. I switched firms. I love my new job. I'm learning like a whole new focus, and the whole year goes by. We host Thanksgiving, and that was awesome with the whole family. And we're sitting on the couch, sort of like we're exhausted after hosting. And I'm doing my self-breast exam. And I noticed something that Dr. Norton said. If it ever comes back, this is what it's going to feel like, which is like a pebble or a frozen pea.
Okay.
You would know it. It is a foreign, very hard object in your body.
Wow.
And I kid you not, like, I knew it. The minute I touched it, and I do breast exams very regularly, even post-mastectomy, they leave a margin, so you have breast tissue. And when I went to see Sloan, and Dr. Norton, he said when he was doing the physical breast exam, I'm not worried about your cancer, because, again, it was fake cancer. But if it ever comes back, this is what it's going to feel like. I'm a little nervous because the breast surgeon left a little too much residual breast tissue behind. And so I will not mention who that was, but he sort of mentioned, like, your breasts go, your normal breasts, you know where they are, but then they go under your armpit and they go like above where your breast is. And so they had left some residual breast tissue under my armpits. Sure enough, that's exactly where the tumor came back.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm doing it. We're almost done with the year. It's the first weekend in December. We're like, cancer-free year, finally. Nope.
Oh
so 2016.
So was it like one day? Were you doing them every day? Was it like one day it was there, one day it wasn't, or a couple days?
I am pretty fanatical about moisturizer and keeping my skin young and supple, and I who knows?
Yeah.
I'm proud of my cute new girls. So I'm like,
Yes.
I touch them and feel them and whatever. But I think I would say it's a matter of weeks that tumor like popped up.
Right. Okay. So then what do you do?
So we are so pissed. I'm like, darn it, I know exactly what this is. I had Jim feel it. He felt the same thing. I mean, we were convinced. Went back to the same breast surgeon because I was comfortable and I had already like vetted them and they were very, one of the first to do nipple sparing, skin sparing. And she said, oh, yeah, it's probably nothing. So dismissed again. And I said, yeah, well, let's do the testing. Sure enough, it was cancer. And then what happens when you find a tumor, because I hadn't had a tumor the last time, it before they surgically remove it, they put this like metal marker in it to really pinpoint exactly where the tumor is. So when they put you under and they go in and, they're kind of messing around in there, they know what to remove. So I had that removed. That was the beginning of January 17.
Is it painful when they put the metal marker in, or
it's almost like a what are those things? Like a nail gun.
Oh God.
I mean, it doesn't feel like a nail. It's like
Right.
a clip.
Okay.
So it's almost like a staple.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel pleasant.
Right.
But it's in like your breast tissues. It's not terrible.
Yeah.
They probably localize it with anesthesia. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they marked it, they put me under, they took it out, waiting for the results. I go see my oncologist, again, Dr. Norton, and he does the physical exam. And he says, I still feel the marker in your breast.
No.
Yeah. So
I love this Dr. Norton.
I mean,
he's the best.
He's the best.
Yeah.
So he's like, no more. You're not going back there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I forbid you. Like,
Okay.
He was like, why'd you go there in the first place? No offense to these people. They're great. It's a great organization. But
Right.
he's like, no, that's it. You're done. And he said, I'm calling Dr. Sakini. We're going to get you in right away. So a couple weeks later, I go back under. I go to the Josie Robertson Surgical Center at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is like going to a hotel. I love it there. Julian has done Josie so proud. It is phenomenal. They are the nicest people there. They treat you so well. From the guy who like opens the car door to press the elevator button for you, and then your family can track you throughout surgery. So I can't say enough good things about what they do. So Dr. Sakini goes in. He removes the marker and a lot more breast tissue. And then they get the pathology back, and there's 3 invasive spots of cancer. So very glad that I got to see Dr. Sakini, and he got a clean margin. So yes, some of the stuff that he took out had cancer in it, but the rest of it was clean.
Wow.
So that's a very good thing. That's what everybody's striving to do. They want clean margins around where there was cancer, because those are just abnormal cells, and they got to get them out of your body. So anyway, this time, because yes, it was fake cancer the first time, that it was melanoma, very early stage, but this time, because it wasn't a new cancer as far as I know. It's hard to tell, but it came back and there were other spots, and sort of third time's the charm. They decided this time chemo and radiation were going to be necessary.
Oh, how did you feel when you heard that?
It is a complicated response because, and I don't know if you have any cancer listeners, this is probably going to sound nonsensical to most people, but when you go through cancer and you don't have radiation or chemo, and it's very common to feel this way, you feel guilty. You feel really guilty because you're sort of like a fake. I mean, Larry was only joking with me, but you feel so bad for everyone else.
Sure.
Because you feel lucky, but you feel like you're kind of an asshole.
Okay.
And
that makes sense. Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's not like anybody wants to. No, later stage cancer patient wants you to have later stage cancer. It's our thing. It's our shit. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do chemo. What does that mean? But he luckily the kind of chemo he wanted me to do was a little less gnarly than like ACT or things that like really are just awful. And, you know, they're necessary when there's a certain type of cancer in a certain stage, but I got off a little bit easier with CMF chemo, which is cytoxin, methotrexate, and 5-FU, which I thought was pretty ironic. But still, you know, you got to look up your formulation and find out which one, how detrimental is it to your fertility?
Okay.
Because they only had 3 eggs. And so I said, okay, Dr. Norton, I want to do more egg freezing before we start this chemo. And he said, fine, you can do 1 round.
Okay.
And I said, okay. So I went and got it done at a big hospital, the same hospital that I went to that I got 3. And, you know, you like walk into the waiting room. It's just kind of like the nasty staff who treats you like a number. And why are you ruining their day by being there? And you kind of, everybody like has their glasses on and looking down and ashamed and don't want to talk. And you kind of see people that you know, but you want to talk about it. And I got paired with the same doctor. They wouldn't let me switch, even though I didn't like him at all. But that's their sort of protocol. So I ended up, you know, he was sort of milquetoast and didn't really give a shit that I had cancer or dealing with a lot of issues with potential infertility. And he, you know, he just didn't care. And it ended up, they did the hyperstimulation again. He had to decide between 2 days to trigger me, and he decided the later day. By the time we got to the retrieval, all the eggs were gone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so they told me that when I was still groggy from, you know, the twilight or whatever they put you on.
Yep.
And I was just sobbing and felt like horrible. And I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't tracking with like a ton of eggs, but I was like, what happened? Like I had just been giving myself all these shots.
Right.
I was, you know, I don't have time to do this again. My doctor told me I could have 1 round. And then the next day, I remember I was like still cramping a little bit and just feeling like just awful about myself. And I get a call from the hospital, and I was thinking it was my fertility specialist giving me, you know, an answer, and it was the billing department. Yeah. So we're just going to say that the person on the other end of that call may have heard every expletive known to man.
Good for you.
And I said, are you fucking kidding me? You better get this man to call me and give me an explanation. You will not see a dime from me. I don't give a fuck. Send everybody after me. I don't care. I am irate. Do you understand? I have cancer. I don't have time for this. You don't give a fuck. Like,
yes.
I went ballistic.
Good for you.
Nuclear launch button.
Yep.
So that was bad. Oh my gosh. And it was just a bad moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I had this like almost panic stricken, I have to get out of here. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I love this one kind of hiking retreat in California. And I remember like looking at my husband and I was like, I gotta go to the ranch. I have to get out of here. I'm gonna call Dr. Norton, see if I can buy like 1 more round. I'll find a new doctor, and I gotta go to the ranch. And I was, at that time, my new company had a like specific IVF policy in their coverage. So I was like, okay, at least like it'll be covered. Because my old firm, they had an IVF policy at one point when the guy's wife was trying to get pregnant, but then he took it off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Really,
okay.
Really nice.
Nice.
Top notch. So this new firm had the policy. I'm like, okay, it'll be okay. I'll call them. And they gave me the same excuse and said, sorry, your IVF policy, even though you have one and it's up to like $25,000, no, it doesn't apply to you.
Doesn't apply to you.
And I said, but no, this time I'm getting chemo, radiation, they're going to put me into medically induced menopause.
Right.
I'm 100% infertile after treatment. And they're like, no, but you're not infertile yet.
Oh my God. That is maddening.
So I went on this retreat. I had that conversation with the insurance company. I hadn't heard from my fertility specialist because he had gone on vacation for 2 weeks. And my mind is...
What if he was on the retreat when you got there?
I mean, woof. I mean, I am small, but I am woof. I would have like been right on him, probably punched him in the face, which is terrible. But I get a little aggro, a lot aggro.
Well, you have a lot to have been aggro about. So
Yeah. So, but in any event, it was the best retreat. I heard back from Dr. Norton. He gave me the green light on another round. I had a dear friend who had gotten great treatment when she decided to freeze her eggs and introduced me to her doctor.
Okay.
Had a wonderful conversation with her. And when I was on this long hike, I think day 3, the name Chick Mission came to me. And I'm like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody's going to feel like the dog shit I felt like, and that I'm less than, and that people are trying, like, what's wrong with humanity? And I'm going to give people hope, and I'm going to give them an extra fight for the battle ahead, and I'm going to give them options. And if they want to have a family after they beat cancer and kick cancer's ass, mm-hmm. I am going to help them do that.
Yes.
And, you know, this is like the whole thing, you know, I'm like, I'm a career finance woman. I can afford this. It feels like shit paying, you know, $60,000 over the course of 3 rounds, one that failed. But I have the money to do it because I was good in math, and Mrs. Yuzo told me I was good in math, and I decided to go into finance.
Yeah.
So I'm allowed to have babies after cancer, but, you know, the cyclist who's a professional cyclist, or the teacher, or the nurse, right. or the whatever, who decided to follow their dream, the artist,
yes,
and aren't making, you know, the money that I was making, they can't have a family after cancer.
Yes.
So that was the fuel and fire that I needed to figure out, okay, you know, I'm going to have to do 4 months of chemo, 7 weeks of radiation, and then be put in medically induced menopause. What am I going to do while I'm sitting in the doctor's office? I love Dr. Norton, but I have to wait hours every time I see him. And, you know, being in the chemo suite, even though we did dress up chemo.
What does that mean?
We picked themes, and my friends and family would come, and we would dress up and just make it a party instead of a sad thing.
Oh, I love that.
This helped my friends not be so scared too.
Yeah.
And we did all chick themed dress up.
You did?
We did like Old MacDonald was one. God. We did, what did we do? We did chick flicks. So we did Clueless.
Oh,
we did the Dixie Chicks. That was my besties from college. What else? We did Wonder Woman.
So good.
That was, my friend Jenny's mom is like the master crafter and made us all costumes. I'll show you pictures. They're amazing.
Yes, I want to see them, please.
So I spent a lot of that time, you know, I ordered Nonprofits for Dummies. I reached out to all my friends who I knew had other friends who had started, you know, small organizations. Right. I had worked for Young Survival Coalition. I was their, you know, fundraiser for their biggest, most successful gala ever. So I know how to ask people for money.
Right.
I just don't know how to run a nonprofit. So I'm like, I'm going to read Nonprofits for Dummies. I'm going to pick a lot of people's brains.
Yeah.
And we'll start slow. I'll find the woman who helped start Fertile Hope, which was the first fertility-focused, uncle fertility charity that got absorbed into Livestrong.
Oh, wow.
So that was Lindsay, like, amazing woman. Mm-hmm. I called Livestrong, and I was like, I need to be best friends with you guys, mm-hmm. and I want to know how you do what you do. And I want to help more people, so let's work together. I was like, this is no competition. I just want to, you know, what can I do to make this organization better and to help more patients that you can't reach, and vice versa. You know, at this point in time, I was 40, and I'm like, yeah, I can do this. Right. I got a lot of friends. I got a lot of amazing friends. One in particular that introduced us.
Right.
Gail.
Our friend Gail, yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, we can do this. We can build it.
Right. So tell me about Chick Mission, in a nutshell, like what's your elevator pitch?
Basically, we help young adults who are diagnosed with cancer. You know, women are born with all of their eggs that they'll ever have. So when a young woman is diagnosed with cancer, she's got a lot of fight in her. She's got a lot of energy. She's got a really good prognosis in most cases. our generation's different. We are very in touch with our bodies. We notice things. There's great science out there and all this great advancement. There's great advancement not only in cancer, but in fertility. So there's all these great options for us. Cancer is a big bump in the road. And I think it's either 95 or 97% of young adults diagnosed with cancer survive.
I heard you say that on the panel that I saw you speak on a couple of weeks ago, and that I was so floored by that, and it made me so happy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so wonderful.
This is not like, I hope this doesn't come off in like poor taste, but it's not your mother's cancer. It's new, like this is young adult cancer.
Yeah.
We get the least amount of resources, and we have the most success rates.
Yeah.
And so what does a healthy life after you fight and win cancer look like if you can't have a family? And not to say, I think adoption is wonderful. I think surrogacy is wonderful. I think there are so many ways to have a family, but no insurance company should tell you or law dictate whether you have a biological child or not. That is insane. That is just not fair. Like you were handed this, you didn't choose to have cancer. You're trying to do, if insurance companies would just stop and think for a moment, if they invest, they could negotiate these rates down very, very low. Say they spent $10,000 to preserve your fertility. Well, after you go through treatment, your likelihood of having a baby, especially with chemo, a lot of the times it's like less than 10%. If you have to go on long-term drug therapy, that just postpones the opportunity to have your baby. So if you get diagnosed at 32 and you have to go on 10 years of drugs, you just got past that 35-year-old cliff. Now they want to, at 42, maybe you're going to be in medically induced menopause at that point. Who knows? And so I just think if a rational person was in charge, which they're not, spend those dollars up front, and then you won't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars later to get this person who's basically infertile pregnant. Or maybe they're forced to have multiples, which costs the system hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or, it's hard. Like people say, adopt. Well, I'm a 3-time cancer survivor who's divorced. You think anybody's going to approve me to adopt a baby?
Wow.
Yeah, don't think so.
Yeah.
So, it's nuts. So the elevator pitch is basically, we want to help young women diagnosed with cancer. Learn about their fertility options. We don't want doctors or insurance companies to make those decisions for you because of a monetary hurdle.
Sure.
We educate men as well, but it's so much cheaper and easier for men to preserve their sperm. And men regenerate their sperm.
Right.
So I made that decision very early on in the process. The first thought when I was on this retreat was I'll cover men and women. And then I was like, you know what? I really just need to focus on something a little bit more exact. And so because I had been through it, I said, I'm going to cover women and married, single, whatever. And so we started just talking about it, forming it.
Tell me about coming up with your founders board. I love this. Just what I read about it. I love the people that you chose to be on your board. Tell me.
So good.
So and this is part of forming a nonprofit. You have to have a board, right?
You have to have a board, and there's like lots of rules and regs, and you have to have bylaws, and you have to apply for a 501c3 designation, and there's a lot of paperwork. But
you had a lot of time in those waiting rooms.
I did, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see what happens here. And even if we help one patient, like to me, that's awesome. And if we can figure out a way to work really smart and make our dollars go really far, that to me, I love that. I'm like just my analytical mind. And, so, I'm sitting in the chemo suite with my mother. So she was a shoo-in. This is her baby dealing with cancer for the 3rd time. My mom is a retired project manager who is just so organized. She plays bridge.
She was a shoo-in.
I mean, done.
I love the way you said that.
I was like, she's the best. She's also just the sweetest, and she's just got a huge heart and is super analytical too and loves a good project. So this was going to be a good way for her and I to bond over something positive, not negative. And so that was done. One of my best friends, we were like getting a pedicure. I had mentioned this was my idea. This is Lori Katz. And Lori unfortunately lost her mom to breast cancer. And it was a very different time. Like, she didn't even know for many years that her mom was sick because she just didn't talk about it. And that actually influenced a lot of Chick Mission too, just that fact. I started an Instagram. I started sharing what I was feeling, what I was going through. I did a post about being depressed and wanting to jump in front of the subway. I did a post about, just feeling less than womanly, and about, boobs, like everything funny to serious.
Right.
And so Lori right away was like, well, I'm absolutely in. I'll be the president. I'm like, perfect. And then another best friend of mine, Emily Ernsdorf Fritz, she was with me in, I think my first 2 chemo rounds. I remember it was Jeff Sessions was testifying. I don't know if you remember that, but like, it was just like a nauseating thing to watch. Yeah. And we're sitting in the chemo suite. It was Emily and one of my best investor buddies and I sitting there, and we do this picture. I have like the IV drip of chemo in my arm. And we're sitting in there like watching the television with Jeff Sessions, and we all have like our fingers up to our heads, like, and the caption was, "What's more nauseating, chemo sessions or Jeff Sessions?"
That's awesome.
So it was so funny. We really brought levity to MSK chemo. Yeah. And we had the best time. So she's like, I'm totally in. Right. And what Lori and Emily and I have in common is that we are hedge fund professionals that raise money for a living. Yeah. And we know a lot of generous, amazing people, and we've all been doing this for a long time. So it's pretty natural for us to ask people to support a good cause, or a good fund. Yeah. So that was a natural fit. And then to round out this powerhouse group, my fertility specialist. So the third time around, I had the best care. Every single doctor at CCRM was so kind, so thoughtful. Their staff, because I had the lymph nodes dissected in the left arm, I could only give blood on the right arm. They had the most amazing nurse who, it was almost painless, and they had to go into the same, area on my arm every other day. And I barely bruised. Like, it was phenomenal. And Jamie Notman was my doctor, and she would text me you got this, you're doing great, everything's gonna be fine. And that's just sometimes what you need. So Jamie is the best mom to 2 young girls. Yeah. She's been doing this a very long time. Her partners, Janet, Brian, and Shiva, are an incredible powerhouse team. They've done Chick Mission Soul Cycle with us. They're amazing. And so I went to Jamie and I'm like, we need a chief medical officer. I need you to be there with us. And she's like, in.
Yes.
And
who can say no to that?
And then finally, last but not least, because she's become one of my best friends in the entire world, I love her, is Tracy Weiss. She's the other survivor on the founding board. She is larger than life, creative, fun, and not in finance, thankfully. We needed someone who could round us out more. But I met her. Her husband works with one of our board members and had mentioned his wife is a cancer survivor, and we should meet her. And I was like, yeah, let's go to lunch. So we met. Within 5 minutes of meeting Tracy, I was like, you have no choice. You have to be on this board. Literally no choice. Was a newlywed, got diagnosed, ended up in passing, somebody mentioned preserve your fertility, and she ended up doing it. And now she's happy, healthy. Yeah. And just she's a force. Yeah. And she brings out the absolute best in me, and I adore her.
So tell me what happened. I know you've been meeting with senators. You've been really changing laws and all this stuff. So tell me what happened in April of this year. There was a big deal, right?
Yeah. This is years coming. There have been, personal friends of mine, actually, a sorority sister of mine who has been a champion to try to change these laws for years after she went through it. There's, a couple of, very large national organizations, Resolve and the Alliance for Fertility Preservation, who have, really laid the groundwork to getting some of this legislative stuff done. We, as an organization, we've got a lot of followers, we've got a lot of survivor friends, and so anytime we hear from those guys, and we try to check in with them regularly or check in with their websites or attend advocacy days, Joyce, who's the executive director of the Alliance for Fertility Preservation, and she's become a friend. I really love her passion and spirit, and both of those groups organize an advocacy day in Albany. And Tracy and I, as the survivors, we're we're 100% in. We're going up to Albany. We want to talk, Elle Woods takes, and we had some great conversations. And they are fighting on behalf of the disease of infertility. The Alliance for Fertility Preservation really fights for, cancer and other illness. And we sort of support it all because we want the laws to change. We know that women and men, we have to have dual income households now. Life is very expensive. Children are expensive. Living in New York is crazy expensive. Living anywhere is expensive too. So we, there was legislation called the Fair Access to Fertility Treatment Act, or FAFTA. Yeah, that was it. It's called FAFTA. But
that sounds right.
They... championing to get IVF coverage for all, getting iatrogenic preservation, basically if you have a serious illness that will affect your ability to have a baby after treatment. So that, that's basically cancer and anything else that you may have to get chemo for, or something systemic that could ruin your chances.
Right.
So Cuomo, yay. Well, the Senate and the Assembly had to support it, and then Cuomo signed his new budget on April 1st, which happened to be a Sunday and April Fool's Day. So when you're signing a multi-billion-dollar budget, I remember it came out and he had a press conference. Well, iatrogenic fertility is not what he's going to be addressing in his, 10-minute press conference. We're talking about roads and bridges and tunnels and homelessness and things like that. And this is a small blip in the budget. That's why we wanted it to get passed too. It doesn't really cost any money. But I mean, I took 2 to 3 hours to go through every single page of that budget to finally get to this is the language and this actually happened. Because I kept waiting, I'm not familiar with politics and how this process works, and I've learned a lot from both of these groups, but I was like, did this happen or not? Somebody tell me. And I was holding my breath and I wouldn't post all day, and I literally was sick to my stomach, and one of my friends was coming over to stay over that night, and finally we heard, and we're like, yes. So
I remember our friend Gail texted me. She's like, "You're never gonna believe it." That was a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And they still, New York still has a long way to go for IVF. They passed it for large group insurers, so now they need to do small and individual plans. But this is a great first step, and it will go into effect on January 1st, 2020.
Okay. Are you involved with the surrogacy laws as well? Because New York, as you know, is one of, 2 states where it's illegal?
3.
Yeah.
Okay. I will not name call, but I've heard a lot of interesting... I don't even know how to phrase this, but there's people on the far right and the far left who are opposed to legalizing surrogacy.
Interesting rhetoric, would you say?
Yes. There is one person, actually, I will name her name, Deborah Glick, Assemblywoman Glick.
Okay.
She happens to be my Assemblywoman. She covers the West Village in Chelsea. Her argument against surrogacy is that we are dealing with climate change, and climate change is caused by overpopulation, and therefore those that can't have a baby should adopt.
Wow. Glick.
Yeah. Guess what? She might try to run again. So anybody who's listening that lives in our area, Deborah Glick, please do not vote for Deborah Glick.
Yes. Boo.
Sorry to get political, but I cannot even believe it.
Political.
And I don't know. I mean, I think there are some people on these far extremes that are anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Which is complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
I think there are some people that I just think there's a lot of people who think it's very elitist. It actually might hurt the surrogate. I mean, New York, the language that they want to pass is very protective of the surrogate. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who I called yesterday. I made a lot of calls to assembly people. Deborah Glick's office happened to say, well, no, that's just not true. And I said, yes, actually, I'm going to send you an article that the Women's Law Review wrote that basically goes to bat every misnomer that you guys are, gossiping about, mm-hmm. and you're completely uneducated about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And this is actually going to help protect surrogates.
Right.
Surrogates' Bill of Rights.
Right, right.
So instead, you want me to go across to New Jersey and not be a part of my future child's life until they're born?
Right. It always baffles me, too, and it's these women that are opposing this stuff. It's like your fellow women.
Your fellow women. I'm like, okay, so you can have a baby and be a part of that and, like, mm-hmm. listen to, feel their feet kick and mm-hmm. be there for all the appointments, but I'm not allowed because I had cancer.
To cross state lines.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So, unbelievable. So back on a good note, tell me about all the good things that Chick Mission has done so far. So you guys come up with these, are they called grants for people, or what do you call them? At first we called them grants, but now we're applying for grants. Okay. So we renamed them Hope Scholarships. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. It's the word that comes out of almost every recipient's mouth is, you just gave me hope. Yeah. And that's what they're intended to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how many people have you guys helped so far? So we had our first board meeting in November of 2017. Okay. Then we did like a suggested donation at somebody's holiday party that December. Yeah. And then we really got to work on fundraising. So in 2018, we did this like spring event at Hudson Yards. We did our big fall event, and then a lot of generous people that we know, mm-hmm. Our Chick Magnetar included, who mm-hmm. has just been the best, wrote big generous checks. And so we were able to give our first Hope Scholarship to a young woman on Valentine's Day of 2018. Mm-hmm. So since Valentine's Day of 2018, we have given 26 Hope Scholarships. Amazing. Yeah. Wow. And that's huge. That's huge. So fast, right? So fast. Okay. And we weren't, we were like, okay, we'll be ready by the end of the second quarter. And that's our goal. Right. And, one of our practices was like, hey, we got a candidate. Are you guys ready? And we're like, yeah, we've got like $75,000 in the bank. Like, I think we're ready. Let's do it. We're doing it. Yeah. And so that young woman, she's single. She was a Division I athlete in college. Mm-hmm. Basically like early 30s. Was like, what the F just happened? Mm-hmm. Cancer diagnosis. And we're like, yeah, no, we're gonna give her hope. Oh, I love that. And she got a lot of eggs. I think she had like, chemo brain's real. But it was like 17 eggs or 20 eggs, something, again, it's quality, not quantity. Mm-hmm. But we were so happy. Yeah. I felt like fulfilled with her eggs, her number of eggs. There is a criteria. It's need-based scholarships, but we try to be generous and we try to help as much as we can. Yeah. And if you don't meet our criteria, we've got other resources that we know of around the country that may be able to help. Right, of course. So tell me, just wrapping up, what advice would you give to somebody who is possibly recently diagnosed with cancer and isn't sure what they want to do, if they want to freeze their eggs, or if it's just too daunting? Or I think, if you have to rush into treatment, you have to listen to your doctors. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you have the time. They can manipulate through science when you start your cycle. And, reach out to us if you need someone to talk to. I mean, I answer all the info at the chickmission.org emails mm-hmm. because I don't feel comfortable having anybody else answer them. Mm-hmm. I've been there. I know how hopeless you might feel. Mm-hmm. I know how dark and impatient you might feel. Mm-hmm. And there's just so much waiting. And this day and age, nobody likes to wait for anything. It's instant gratification, and you got to wait for these pathology reports and things. And
second opinions and who do I even talk to? And this is a new lingo of cancer. And then there's this whole other fertility lingo.
There's all these acronyms.
Oh, these acronyms, yes. Which I just bombarded
Somebody told me
you
we
with.
should do like a glossary of terms.
Oh my gosh, we should.
Because there's so many.
Yeah, I'll add your cancer glossary.
Right, combined.
Yeah, Infertile AF. But I would just say, have hope. You are going to get through this. It's going to take some time and it's going to suck. But on the other side, you want options. And just because you're scared and overwhelmed right now, you truly want to preserve. You want to figure out a way to do it, whether it's through a scholarship, put it on your credit card, ask your family for help. Maybe this is the next 10 Christmas presents you ever get. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You want to do it. The science is there. Eggs, do eggs. It's almost as good as embryos. It's so close now that just do eggs. It's cheaper. Freeze your eggs.
Right.
Just have an option for later.
Yeah.
When these things are going to get cheaper. You're going to get more coverage down the line. There are laws that are changing.
You are changing them.
New York just changed their law. There are other states, New Jersey, it might happen there. Oregon, it might happen there. There's so much going on, and we're going to move Chick Mission. That's the other exciting thing. We're taking our show on the road, and we're going to cover patients in Texas and California in the next year. So
awesome.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Come to our gala. Come to our ladies only event. Spin with us at SoulCycle.
Absolutely.
We're saying yes to all the events.
Yes, I love it. Well, you are such a badass.
Thanks. Babe.
Thank you for doing this, and thank you for being so open.
Thanks.
And thank you for starting Chick Mission.
Oh,
and I also want to mention your necklace, which is the little chick. We'll maybe show a picture of it, but it's so great.
So we're doing this profit share for the amazing Chick Charm. I have a wonderful friend, Mariana, who started a jewelry company for women by women, and it's called Cut and Clarity. So you can go to www.cutandclarity.co, not com, C-O, and she's got the chick on there. They have rose gold, they have white gold, they have yellow gold with a black diamond eye.
Yeah,
and then she also sells the most badass boob necklace.
Oh, is that the boob necklace one too?
So I stack.
Wait, weren't you saying that got banned from Instagram?
Yes. Instagram keeps saying you can't post the boobs necklace, which Mariana and I are not going to stand for that.
No.
I mean, I will post my real boobs if they have a problem with the boobs necklace, which you probably don't want to see. But actually, they're pretty good. But the boobs necklace is also available on Cut and Clarity. Yeah. And it has diamond nipples. Hello. So for anyone, it's a very fierce,
it's really
forceful, girl power. I mean, anybody who has ever had a mastectomy, I love wearing my boobs on my neck. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a conversation starter. But stacking them with my chick and whatever else I want to wear that day
loads of conversations.
It's my armor, so.
I love it.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Allie.
Hey again, guys. Thank you for listening. I love when Amanda talks about being a cancer overachiever. Isn't she the fucking best? Make sure to check out Chick Mission, and please pass this on to anybody who might be dealing with cancer, especially young adults who might not know what their options are. It's such a great organization. And I'm going to post about their fundraiser, which is coming up this fall. I will be there. Amanda will be there. A bunch of other people will be there. You can be there too. I'll post all the info. So go to my Instagram, which is Infertile AF Stories, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks again, Amanda. Love you, girl.